first book was a history of Richard Nixon's image, not a biography of Nixon, but the story of what Nixon meant to the American public. And I look at a whole series of groups of Americans and how they formed their images of Nixon. It's through Nixon, in part, I try to suggest in the book, that this concern with image becomes such a part of the media discourse, of public thinking, of what politicians do. It's not just that Nixon is doing it, it's that he helps make us all aware of how much it goes on within politics. So in a way, it was the work on Nixon that led me into the book I'm writing now, which is a history of spin. It's both a history of the presidency and the evolution of the apparatus of message making and image making around the presidency, but then it's also an intellectual history of how the public, and in particular various journalists and intellectuals, respond to these developments and what, in the end, this says about our concerns with our democracy. Spin implies a bit of a game, that there's some play involved, that we're getting spun, that there's counter spin, and it suggests, I think, something that's accurate too, which is the audience has some awareness of this. But increasingly, I think we have the tools to try to resist this, challenge it. Sometimes we see spin we like when it's by our guy and we applaud it. We applaud the craft or the skill that goes into it. Sometimes we're quite able to see through it and argue back. I see the development of spin as something that is, if not inevitable, that is sort of part of modern society, and the trick is not to denounce it or to sort of wish that our leaders were more honest or just could level with us, but to recognize this is part of politics, and it is public's responsibility. Often public meets that responsibility of reckoning and grappling with the spin, and that's part of what political debate and argument is challenging spin and understanding it and decoding it. It's really with the 20th century, I think, with Theodore Roosevelt, the rise of mass media, and the orientation of the presidency toward public opinion in a kind of regular way that I think sort of changes the nature of what presidents do. You also have in this period public relations professionals, people like Edward Bernays and Bruce Barton and people from advertising start getting involved in presidential campaigns, and eventually too in advising sitting presidents beyond just the campaign. So the challenge is in educating people as to which news sources tend to be more objective, even if we want to sort of reject the notion that anyone is perfectly objective. There are some that aspire to objectivity. Within a certain segment of the professional news media, the goals of objectivity are kind of enshrined as what reporters work toward, regardless of whatever their personal views. And I think if people can come to understand how those sources are more reliable as sources of information, and then if they want to go to other sources to get a sense of how to interpret that information, that's something everybody does. Everybody comes to their own political opinions. I think government inevitably does and should argue its case in a way that is it wishes to be heard. But we, in turn, both we, the public, and also we, the media, have an obligation to handle those interpretations skeptically and to question it and to seek out other interpretations.